Go ahead and open your first step book that looks like this. We're going to turn to page 5. Go ahead and turn to page 5. This is what page 5 looks like in your first step book. And right now we are going to be looking at number 4. It says reading by interval, seconds, and fingering. So page 5, number 4. So here's number 4. And today we're going to be reading the top line or the G clef line of these intervals of seconds. We've talked quite a bit about intervals in the preliminary lessons, but let's review a little bit of what we know already about intervals. First of all, intervals of seconds are next door sounds. So they go up by step, or up by seconds, or down by step, or down by seconds. So let's listen. Here's a few intervals of seconds going up. And here are a few intervals of seconds going down on the keyboard. We have also learned that when we play intervals of seconds, we use next door fingers. So for example, if we're using our left hand and we start with our thumb on one note and we're playing an interval of a second down, we would use the next closest finger, which would be this, our pointer finger. And with our right hand, let's say that we're starting with a middle finger on a note and we're playing up an interval of a second, we would play the next finger up. So we would use our ring finger. So with intervals of seconds, we always use next door fingers. We also know that intervals of seconds are played with next door letters. So in front of you, you see the letters that we use as the names of the sounds on the piano. And whenever we're playing intervals of seconds, we're always using next door letters. So if we play a C and we want to play down an interval of a second, we would play the letter next door to C, which would be B. Or if we're going up in intervals of seconds and we play C, we would go up to the next door letter, or we would play a D. And finally, we know that intervals of seconds come with next door keys on the piano. So if we're playing an interval of a second, and we're starting on middle C right here, and we're going up by seconds, the next key we would play, or the next sound, would be D. Or if we're going up another interval of a second, we would play the sound E. So here we are back at page 4. This is a little exercise that we're working on. But first, we see this little tiny 1 right here, right next to the blue arrow, right above the first note we're going to play. What does that little tiny 1 mean? So that is called a fingering, or a finger number. It is telling you, that little tiny 1 is telling you which finger goes on that note. So I think we talked about this way back at the beginning of preliminary lessons, but just as a reminder, here is a picture of 2 hands, and our thumbs are number 1s. Then our next fingers, or our pointer fingers, are number 2. The next ones are number 3. The next finger is number 4. And the next finger is number 5. So if we come back here to page 5, number 4, we know that that little tiny 1 means that our thumb goes on the first note. The first note, that's another question. So what is that first note that we see? So let's see how we can figure it out. Maybe you know it, and that's great. If not, we know that we're working with the G clef, and we know where the G clef line is. So maybe we can work our way up from the G clef line by intervals and see if we can figure out what that first note is. So take a few seconds, and why don't you try? Can you figure out what is that first note? So that first note is the C above middle C. So here's a picture of our keyboard. And middle C is usually pretty easy to find on our keyboard. So there's middle C by the blue arrow, and this is the C above middle C. So we'll place our thumb on that C. So I want you to take your book and go to your piano. We've talked about all the things we know about intervals of seconds. And as we look at this music, I want you to slowly watch as the notes go up and down by seconds. We know that the interval of a second goes from a line to a space or a space to a line. So if you see, all of these notes move by seconds. So on this, work especially hard watching whether the notes are going up or down. So go take a few minutes and have a seat at your piano and see if you can play the treble clef line of these intervals of seconds. Is this what it sounded like when you played your intervals of seconds?